Welcome to the Injury Law Pod, the podcast that explores and demystifies the complex world of personal injury law. Each week, Missouri personal injury attorney Eric Bartlett dives into the legal issues surrounding personal injury cases to help you understand your rights and options when seeking justice and compensation for personal injuries. So sit back, relax, and let's explore the world of personal injury law together.
Welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 28-year personal injury lawyer, and this is the podcast where we discuss all things related to personal injury law. And we are in the month of March, and it is Brain Injury Awareness Month. And so we're doing some episodes specifically dealing with brain injury. So we're doing this special episode. It's not going to be a real long one, but it's specifically about brain injuries in the workers' compensation setting, because it does have a little bit of its own intricacies as opposed to when someone is injured in a car accident, or maybe they fall and they injured their brain. As with most injuries in the work comp arena, there are things you just have to know and expect when you're in that system. And so that's why we're going to do a little episode here just to specifically talk about brain injuries in the work comp setting. First off, with a brain injury in a work setting, the injury may or may not be immediately apparent. So, for example, someone is injured, and maybe they don't even hit their head. Maybe there's a situation where their head is involved in some movement, forceful movement. I hate the word, but we'll use it here to get the idea, which is whiplash, right? But some way, somehow, they have had some traumatic force to their head, not necessarily where it's made contact with anything, but it has caused their brain to move within their skull. And this has led to some kind of a brain injury, a possible, right, most common term, concussion. And again, when it first happens, it's not necessarily immediately apparent, but as that injured worker goes down the road from the injury, starts to have concussion type symptoms, fogginess, headaches, difficulty concentrating, and maybe even more progressively, right, light sensitivity, sensitivity to sound, things like that. So you have to remember, in Missouri, you have 30 days to report an injury to your employer. And so what if, right, the initial incident is reported, the person gets checked out, maybe they're complaining about neck pain, maybe they're complaining about something else on their body that was injured, but they are not immediately complaining about that concussion. Well, that's why it's very important, if you think you've had a brain injury of some sort, of any sort, arising out of a work situation, as soon as you start experiencing some kind of symptoms, you have to report it to the employer. And again, remember, if your employer does not fill out an incident report, get your signature on it, whatever that looks like, you have to report the work injury in writing to your employer. So you just got to keep that in mind. And the same goes with something like I'm talking about now, where an injury maybe develops over the course of whatever it looks like, couple weeks, few weeks. you need to make sure that you are getting it reported to your employer as soon as you believe you have a problem. And you also need to ask them to get you seen for what you're experiencing now in the way of symptoms that very likely may have come out of some kind of traumatic brain injury you experienced. Again, a lot of times when you do have, again, let's just go with the most common form, a concussion. When you have that, generally speaking, it's pretty evident pretty quickly, and you'll get checked out for that. Whether, again, you're sent to an urgent care, an emergency room, or whatever that looks like. And again, depending on the severity, you're going to be given a protocol to follow to help you recover from that. But as we've talked about in the earlier episode on brain injuries, these things can be progressive, and they don't always just resolve on their own. And a greater intervention could very well be necessary. And what I see a lot of times is that an employee is complaining of a head injury, right? A brain injury of some sort, and they're not getting put in the proper medical hands. So, as with so many things in work comp, the work comp insurance company wants to keep the injured worker at the occupational clinic, medical clinic that they send everybody to, because that's their cheapest option for medical care. And again, remember, what's the insurance company's goal? To pay as little as they have to. And so they try to keep you there at that medical clinic. These doctors that are at these work injury clinics, they know what their mission is. They're there to provide the minimal amount of care that's needed, and they do not want to have to get specialists involved if they don't have to. And that's just like we've talked before, where maybe you have a shoulder injury and you really need to have an MRI to see what's going on there. Well, they're going to make you do physical therapy first, and then if you just continue to complain and not get better, they hopefully eventually get you an MRI. But of course, they don't want that MRI because they figure, it's going to show something that is going to then require the intervention of a specialist. So just like with those scenarios with a brain injury of some sort, again, they're going to try to manage it inside the clinic, and they're probably not going to get you the care that you truly need, and you just have to be the squeaky wheel. And let's say they do finally get you to what most likely what you need is a neurologist. A neurologist is typically the doctor. There are sports medicine doctors that also deal with concussions and are concussion specialists. But you need somebody that deals with concussions, knows what the heck they're doing, knows what you need, and that's the most important thing. And so eventually you get in the hands of a neurologist, or again, sports medicine doc. Now, again, the problem is if you're getting to a doctor that the work comp insurance company likes, then they're probably on the side of the work comp insurance. And so many of these injuries, I've seen it, that they just really get brushed aside, and they tell people, okay, you need to take it easy, right? You need to relax. They don't offer up any type of therapy. And there are a lot of different therapy options. If you're dealing with a concussion, first off, the concussion may be getting made worse by a neck injury that would benefit from physical therapy. And then we talked about on the other episode, there is vestibular therapy, which is a whole specialized therapy that helps people restore their balance and other issues they may be experiencing from a concussion. And this is, crucially important. And again, if they've never actually had the appropriate brain rest that they need, it's a very high likelihood that a doctor that truly does specialize in concussions and does want to get somebody better from it will recommend a downtime, no screens, no computers, and will really focus on letting the injured person's brain rest. And again, this kind of an injury, this kind of treatment, it can go on for a long time depending on the severity. And I can tell you from my personal experience, I have multiple people right now that have experienced brain injuries in a work-related incident. And for the most part, what I've seen is that they get kicked loose from treatment way too soon. And what eventually happens in a lot of cases, it's kind of a weird situation because I'm hesitant when that happens. I mean, I'll go to bat for my client and I'll try to get them back in to the work comp system and get them more treatment. But I also tell them, see if you can get treatment on your own. Because the reason for that is what I kind of talked about earlier is if you're on your own and you're getting treated by doctors that actually don't have an interest in the situation, they're not getting paid by the work comp insurance company, you very well may get the actual treatment you need. And so I have clients that end up getting treated on their own. So they've been, again, put at maximum medical improvement. Those are the magical terms that work comp doctors use. These work comp doctors say, yep, you're good. You're all done with your concussion and no more treatment needed. And then they end up getting started on treatment with their own doctors, and they end up having a lot of treatment. And then when that is finally done, we circle back around, we work on a settlement for them. But meanwhile, they had been kicked loose by these work comp docs when they were not done getting cared for. And that's the real shame of it all, because again, you have these people that are hurt and are having a lot of difficulty, and the work comp system is failing them because the doctors that they've been sent to just are not doing all that they can do for them. And, it's really important that, again, I've got, like I said, right now I've got 4 people I can think of that are either inside the work comp system getting treated, but having difficulty getting the full treatment they need, or have been able to get help on their own. And here's the other interesting thing is, these concussions, there's something called post-concussion syndrome. Post-concussion syndrome can last for a very long time. I mean, we're talking years. And a person may need to be on medicine to help with continuing headaches, things like that. And so it's really not fair to the injured worker when they get just kicked loose. And again, some neurologist that's hired by the work comp insurance company says, oh, yep, you're good, you're done, you do not need anything further. And that could be further from the truth, because they're still having a lot of issues. And this just doesn't magically go away in all cases. And this person may need a lifetime of some kind of care to manage residual problems they're having from a brain injury. So Work comp and a brain injury are a real tricky situation because, again, of that competing problem where those work comp doctors are trying to move these people along, get them off of the work comp insurance. And meanwhile, these people should not be let go. They are having continuing problems. And if they're not appropriately addressed, they don't get better and they may get worse. And that is the really sad thing about it, because if appropriately treated and managed, then the person can get back to life and get back to work and go from there. And then finally, we have to talk about settlement wise, right? So at some point, you are entitled to disability settlement in work comp. And lo and behold, as you might imagine, these injuries are not valued, certainly not by a work comp doctor. If a work comp doctor is asked to give a disability rating from some type of a brain injury, again, if we're looking at these concussions, the most common type of brain injury, they just do not value them well at all. And that's why it's really important to have your own doctor involved, and whether that comes from your work comp lawyer getting that doctor involved or some other way, you need to have your own independent evaluation to really make sure you're getting the disability settlement you should. And also, if you require long-term care, that's factored in as well. So that is the overview of brain injuries and how they are handled in the work comp system or mishandled. And so if for any reason that's make sure you get help, and don't go it alone. It's a tough road, and there's a lot that goes into it. And as always, if for some reason you need help on any type of a work injury, feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to talk. No obligation. And if you found this podcast episode useful and informational, I always ask, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you found it. And till next time, stay safe, stay well.